And finally, you know, after remarks 2 weeks ago, I see now that we have a lot of meetings put ahead of us. In particular, there's a Planning Commission agenda that would remove the housing element from VALCO. And if I understand correctly, it would also ask the Planning Commission whether they wanted to zero out the office allocation. Is that correct?
It's not specific to how much allocation, but to examine whether they want to change the allocation of office.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, where I'm coming from, I think we've heard it in oral communication. I've received lots of written correspondence. It seems to me, and we'll have to see where everybody else is, but it seems to me that asking the Planning Commission to weigh in at this stage it's premature, and this needs to be done with more deliberation. So I basically fall on the side of a better process to, if we are going to make any revisions, to do that. And we took, nearly 2 years in a deliberative process to come up with our last big general plan amendment. And I don't think we ought to be, rushing. And we ought to think about, if we're going to change VALCO or anything else, I think we have to be deliberative and thoughtful about what are the economic factors that can make a project go, and we ought to be dialing in numbers accordingly. But I will tell you, I'm actually hopeful, right, that, as I said before on the other item, I'm hopeful that we can actually follow a process that is our normal process, that we do CEQA, that we do the analysis, that we mitigate, that we negotiate community benefits and all. I was struck by the fact that actually the letter we received to restart this process was dated October 4th, and the housing bills were signed by Governor Brown the week prior, on the 29th of September. So, I mean, that was a signal to me that perhaps the developer may really prefer the project they may be able to get out of a CEQA process rather than SB 35. I think in this case, frankly, the retail allocation of 600,000 square feet is a big impediment to just doing, frankly, the project that I might like to least see. But what I would say is I'm not supportive of asking the Planning Commission to move forward to consider these things without really taking time to do the analysis, to do the outreach, and so forth. I think we're giving them a rather thankless mission if we do that. So that's where I sit on that. Thank you.
I have to echo what you say, because to my surprise, generally this has to go through the majority of the council to discuss first. Now we just give the instruction to the planning to look into this. I was caught in surprise, and a very unpleasant surprise. So I agree with you. I don't think this is the proper way to do it. I don't want to rush. Last time we took 2 years. We've been accused we made the wrong decision, which I disagree. Now we are going to do this in couple weeks, couple months. I don't think we'll get into much bigger trouble down the road. So I totally don't want to be rushed, and I don't want to do it not in the normal process.
So the last time this was discussed in council comments, and 3 council members talked about it, which is how it got on the agenda. So just to be very, very clear here, we are almost doing the exact same thing again. So my concern here is when we give direction here, when we have one council member say something, which is why I said earlier when something was discussed, we need to have a very clear direction given to the staff, and possibly in written, because it's quite confusing when we give direction and staff understands it as something else, and which I don't know if it was unintended consequences from what I'm hearing now. But I would like these council comments with support by a 2nd or 3rd council member to be then sent in written, so that staff knows what they are going to do next, what's going to be their next step.
So So I will acknowledge that I was interested in understanding generally, right, what would happen across the city and doing things that seemed appropriate to me. But amending the general plan in a very short window is not my idea of a good time. I could see if we think we've got some general deficiency in how we've zoned housing, where we want to preserve retail, that we take a look at the whole enchilada, given that we're more, frankly, we're likely to have more of these kinds of bills. So I think we need to have, a thoughtful and respectful process. But targeting, I was not in favor and am not in favor of, targeting a particular project where we already have an application in motion, and it looks like we're working toward what I hope, right, is our normal CEQA-based process.
So I have a question for the city manager and city attorney. If we have now a recommendation and a second, how do we move forward?
Well, all right. So the actions that staff took to further the direction we got was based on the same direction. So you'd be directing us to do it differently, which is fine. I don't think there's a legal issue with that. It does raise the issue of, I had a lot of council members pretty upset with me over the last week or so for a number of different reasons, but largely because of what we got was fairly general direction. Mm-hmm. And staff really works hard to try to effectuate what they think they hear. And lots of times that means we have to take a lot of actions that council may not have thought we would have to take. And so having it in writing could help. It's certainly, we need to find a way of being clear so when council wants to do something, we're able to either take the time or whatever to let you know what that means, because sometimes it may go farther than what you intend.
Because now this has been legally noticed.
Well, then we can cancel. There's no problem doing that. But
okay. I would like to hear from council members on this side.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that legal notice as well. I didn't think that that's what we had asked for. So you're right. There's confusion in what we said, I guess.
Right. Well, what you said and what we did to effectuate what you asked for, which.
I do appreciate Councilmember Paul and Sinks recognizing that the GPA that passed in 2014 was passed with certain expectations going forward of the council being able to approve specific plans, and that these housing bills have the potential to take all that away. And that's the reason why we wanted to look into this further, because it is a big change. It's not saying that what happened was wrong or misguided. It was done at the time with what was known at the time, and now everything is changing, and we really do need to look into this. And we want to move forward with the housing that was in the RENA allocation and see how we can do that, because it hasn't happened yet.
Vice Mayor.
I agree with the very specific notice regarding the reallocation of housing to option B. That was simply not something that was requested. And I think that kicked off a lot of community sentiment. In terms of the rush nature of the process, the legislation was passed in late September, as Councilmember Sinks notes, and so that gives us a very limited window to respond if we would need to respond. The danger is still there, and I think that given the fact that the legislation itself takes effect on January 1st in 2018, it doesn't change the calculus. But I respect the majority of the council, but I think that it is something that we need to be well aware of what the potential impact is. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't at least continue with the study session that we have scheduled for Monday.
Study session
next
is in
week.
place.
Right. I mean, that's in place. It's just that, I think, members of the public should come, ask the right questions, and try to, gauge, because it's an open question as to what particular projects have as their impacts. And if we are accurate in terms of those impacts, and our consultants have done a good job, then if it does turn out that, for example, what were previously, simply provisional allocations under the general plan subject to approval of the specific plan, then turn into automatic entitlements that then translate into much larger projects than we had anticipated or, frankly, anyone had ever introduced, then that risk, is maintained. And so, I mean, I really don't see
Since this is council comments, I don't want to go too deep into that. It's just council comments, so I'm just asking for procedural sake. There was a motion and a second, kind of, in council comments about getting something else to the agenda.
Right. I mean,
So-
I didn't open the door to talking about,
Yeah.
moving procedural meetings away. So, I mean, I want to be able to accurately reflect, what my position here is. So, with respect to the procedure and how that would affect our potential delivery of, solutions to problems that we could identify, I just want to make very clear that we're not trying to rush something that, previously took a long time to arrive at. At the end of December 2014, I was that holdout vote that said, look, it's 3 a.m. in the morning on the second night in a row of a council meeting. Is this a good idea to allocate if we're not talking about heights, setbacks, or any other kind of limitations? So, I mean, we're now stuck with an artifact of that decision, and you could very well look at it and go, hey, it might have been 2 years leading up to it, but the actual decision itself was pretty hastily rendered. So, I mean, I think at the end of it, if you're following it, and if you're being fair, then ultimately the problems that are being identified are still there, and there's no reason whatsoever not to at least proceed with a study session. So, I mean, I would still hold that the responsible thing to do is to keep our options open. But again, I respect the council majority. I wasn't.
There was no recommendation to
wasn't-
change the study session.
I wasn't. It surprises me that we're talking about the procedure for a future meeting of a decisional body, because the Planning Commission is empowered with decision-making authority over land use issues, which is of course subject to appeal to the council. But now that door has been opened, I mean, I would just say that I think it's critically important to the community, and that there's an appetite in the community to hear objectively what the impact would potentially be. But ultimately, Rod, if you're now saying that, well, the 2 million square feet of office, it's not something that bothers me, that's certainly your prerogative.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, I think what's on the agenda for the Planning Commission, right, includes removing the housing element. As I understood it, they were also to consider dialing back the housing element. So these are decisions the council has made. I think before we, frankly, put the Planning Commission before we tee up anything that the Planning Commission could take action on, we have to give them some direction that comes from really a deliberative process with public input and all of it. So, yes, I've said in council comments previously that I'm interested in a project that would dial back the office and increase housing. But, the amount of each of those, right, is certainly going to be one on which we need good economic analysis to sort out, community input from various stakeholders. Do we want to, You know, if office is the really lucrative thing that, Richard said it when he was up here, if office is the thing that pays for community benefits, you know, we could decide that we want to dial down the office, but with that, we'd start cutting benefits. And so, trying to, you know, have a planning commission go sort that out without all that input and analysis and community engagement, it just seems premature to me. So that's where I'm coming from.
I have been very consistent. Now, at the last meeting, I mentioned about do not rush. We do have a process to follow, and then if we don't follow the regular process, we'll be accused again, attacked again. And this is the community we are in, and then I've been through it, okay? And I don't want to see this council body get into that kind of attack again.
And I wish I had your wisdom 2 weeks ago.
Sure. Thank you.
Irrespective of that, we have always had the process of, during council comments, if a council member suggests something for the agenda and it's seconded, then we do put it on the agenda, which is why we moved ahead the last time.
Yeah.
And we are having the exact same situation now, so I want a very clear direction from our city attorney and city manager to tell us how we can proceed here, and at a later date, please give us further clarity on how you want to continue with this. Because this, when we speak like this, we give some direction, it seems to be, at a later date, someone takes it back or feels that it was misconstrued. We should not have this again. So I think having something in written is really important.
I mean, honestly, right, it is hard to foresee what we say up here, sometimes how that turns into action. So I wasn't briefed before about what was going to happen. I'm with everybody else, I think. I'm very interested in having the study session. I just wouldn't go forward with all the work and the formality of a planning commission hearing at this time.
The study session was always in place. It had nothing to do with the comments made that night.
Well, okay, so I'm hearing we're going on ahead with the study session that it's previously been, but we're going to stand down
All the
planning
housing
commission?
bills, yes.
Okay.
The study session was going to be about the community hearing the housing
The housing
bills.
yes.
15 of them, each saying something different, and
Yes.
just for us to understand what the total impacts. We know of some of them, but there are some which we are not very conversant with, so it would be nice to know about those. And
Yeah,
we'll
and-
have experts, I'm assuming, coming and talking.
Yes, we have experts, and presumably the public doesn't understand them as well as you do, so
Yeah,
that'll be
it would be very good for the public to hear out too. We had our young housing commissioner come and speak to that, and I think it's really important. So now, what is the direction given to staff? I want it to be very clear here.
Well, I already spoke, and I thought I was clear as a bell.
And we have, to not hold the planning commission meeting.
Okay, is that okay? Is that the direction?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's my due.
Yes.
Okay. So again, you have two people saying that, so which means you'll give direction to the staff to not have the planning commission meeting.
Hopefully we get a majority here, because I think,
Is this something you want us to vote on?
Well, it typically.
we don't vote, it's just.
Because this
we
is
gotta
not,
talk
this
about it.
is not agendized.
Right.
So
And the other one wasn't either.
Well, let me just say this. You know, I mean, at the end of it, and considering it, you know, over the course of our discussions in the last 2 weeks, I mean, even though we do have what's essentially a hard deadline written into the law of January 1st, I don't think, practically speaking, you know, come the new year, there's going to be, you know, some kind of new code compliant project that seeks to take advantage of all the allocations that could have been potentially turned into entitlements. And so, you know, at the very least, we would need to examine this. We have that on the agenda.
Yes.
Let's proceed with this. And you know, there's always the parade of horribles, but you know, I'm hearing what people are saying. Let's have a process. Let's keep it open. I've been 100% an advocate of openness, and been trying to keep everything. I think you would agree with that. That you know, whenever there's an opportunity to keep things, you know, transparent and clear to the public, I take it. So at the end of all of this, if the pushback is essentially we need more time to consider this, then let's take more time to consider this, with the common understanding that in taking that time, because of the nature of this legislation, you do have a window of time where there's a risk. So I would agree. Let's go ahead with the study session next Monday. If you want to take the meetings of the Planning Commission as well as, I guess, the Environmental Review Committee, would that be correct?
Yeah, there's no need for the Environmental Review Committee if we don't have a Planning Commission meeting.
Right. So
to be very clear, the direction given to staff is to hold the study session on Monday, November 27th at 6:45 and cancel the Planning Commission meeting on 28th as well as the ERC.
Okay.
We agree?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not putting in an explicit, third. So if you wanted to third it, then please do. But I did want to point out that there's this, this is this lingering effect of an enactment of January 1st. So I don't want to be misunderstood here. I want to put on the record that I believe that there is a loose end that we're leaving here. But if you're thirding it, then I respect the will of the majority.
No, I heard it from you, which is why I said we all agree.
No, I'm not thirding it. I am not. I'm pointing out that there is a loose thread. If there is a third
we
vote,
agree there's a loose thread. None of us are denying that. But it's what direction we give to staff here.
But you have 3 already, don't you?
No, we don't have 3. And we don't need 3, by the way.
yes,
we don't.
Well, we have 3 to put this into place. So, good point.
You don't.
Right.
You need 2.
Right, David, you told me before the meeting, the open session last time, if you have a concern about this, bringing up an open session in council context, get someone to second it. Right? That was, right. You told me as the city manager to do that. So we did that. So the question is, can this be undone with 2? Because the direction was to find 2.
Yeah, that's a new one for me. I don't think we've ever been in this situation. So, the policy we have for getting stuff on the agenda is, unfortunately, it's informal. We actually checked; it's not in the ordinance or anything. It's just by practice, 2 council members have been able to put something on the agenda. We've never really dealt with having council members want to take something off the agenda. Or in this case, it's actually not even that. It's giving staff direction for a subordinate committee or commission. It's just never come up, so actually don't know the answer. Certainly 3 generally rules over 2.
I'll third it.
Okay. So you have unanimous consent for the Monday study session.
Yes.
And then you have a majority for taking it off of planning and eventually, based upon whatever planning recommends, possibly bring it back.
Yeah, well, I think hopefully we'll get maybe some more clear direction after the study session.
Right.
Exactly.
So we'll take more time on it, and then we'll be able to do the outreach over time. And I hear what people are saying. It's holiday season. Thanksgiving's coming up. We've got the New Year's, so.
But you didn't want to third it.
I still don't want.
Yeah, so.
I still don't want to
Okay.
third it because of the fact that.
I know it's not that the rest of us are
Yeah.
not aware of the loose thread, but
Yeah, we haven't affected
considering process and everything else, and 2 people brought it up. And then I really want to request staff going forward to formalize this process so that we are not in this situation.
Yeah, I think the council's directed us to bring formal rules back.
Yes.
We can certainly address
Yes.
those informal rules.
Formal rules, anything like this.